March 8th, 1971. So 50 years ago today is the fight of the century. Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. I'm too young. Obviously, I've read a million books and I know all, but I'm too young to have been able to appreciate the magnitude of that event. But you're not. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on that fight, on what it meant in the culture at the time, and what you think 50 years later it means today.
It was the most important event in my life. That's how much it meant. And I can tell you that 10 years older, Tony Kornheiser, not only can he say the same thing, he said the same thing. Because we started calling each other last night saying, "You watching this?" And I apologize. I didn't watch any All-Star game. Because between that and then the GOATS series afterward, this was some of the most amazing TV we've ever had on our network. It is the most important event of my life. There's no World Cup that was even more important in Great Britain, Greeny. A third of the people in Great Britain watched live, and it started at 2 a.m. there. There's no event, there's no sporting event that meant more to anyone. 300 million people at the time watched live. I mean, what are we talking about? What's the percentage of the planet that was then? And there wasn't even the technology to bring it to 3 billion if there were 3 billion, because 3 billion would have watched. So I don't want to hear, somebody say, well, Duke Carolina, shut up. I don't even want to hear anybody say Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Tom Brady. It didn't mean anything, Greeny, compared to that fight. And my father months earlier said to my mother in front of us, "Look, I'm going to get tickets and go to this." Meaning closed circuit telecast. They were $15 a piece, Greeny, in 1971. $15 a piece. $60 was probably about a quarter, no, more than that, a third of my father's bring home pay in 1971. My mother said, "You will not spend that much money on these tickets. And these boys will not even study or do their homework for the next 3 months because they'll go nuts." So my father said, "Okay, we can't go." The night of the fight, 5 o'clock, and you know how early Midwestern dinners are. They're like 5 p.m. supper. We get home from school. The tickets are on our dinner plates. My father did it. Literally the most serious disagreement that he and my mother had in their marriage, as far as I know. He got the tickets and a fourth one for my Uncle Sonny, and the 4 of us went. It's the greatest night of my life. And the most pain caused to see Ali lose. Nothing ever measured that. No childhood sadness measured up to that. And so if people can watch what was on last night, they need to watch it. There's no All-Star. I'm sorry, I missed Oprah's interview. I missed the All-Star game. I don't care about any of that. It's the most important thing out there, and the cultural impact of it, and what Frazier and Ali meant to the world, and how much they loathed each other. Even though Frazier had loaned money to Ali when he was suspended for 3 years. I mean, people can't comprehend it. So they need to put their stupid phones down at some point and stop being self-indulgent and stop thinking all the important things in the world have happened in the last 10 minutes and they're on Instagram, because none of it's on Instagram. Ali Frazier is the biggest event of our lives. Anyone old enough to remember, you got to be 57, 58 years old to have any real clear memory of it. At least I do. And there's been nothing. By the way, the Thriller in Manila was a better fight. The Thriller in Manila was more brutal. It brought 2 men closer to death in a boxing ring than they said this. They admitted it. They both had to go to the hospital twice. And yet, it was complete lack of fear or regard for their own health and safety and their lives to put on this fight. And so if people think that some game, some NFL game or some NBA game or the 2016 Cubs, it's nothing compared to that. And there's a brilliant documentary on it, Greeny, called A Nation Divided, I think, which was done some years ago by HBO, in which basically the nation had to choose sides. You had to choose a side, Ali or Frazier. And people need to look at this and find out why, and find out why it's more important than anything they think is now important.
Greeny and the great Michael Wilbon. I have like 4 minutes left. Basically, for those who don't know the history of it, Frazier was the quote-unquote establishment side. When you're saying people were choosing sides, right? Frazier was the establishment side.
He was, let's go even deeper and be plainer about it.
Yeah.
He was the great white hope.
Right.
I mean, the White Hope was always a staple. It was a necessary ingredient in championship boxing, from Jack Johnson all the way through maybe, I don't know, fairly recently to 20 years ago. It was always a staple. And people could look at Joe Frazier and say, how can anybody that black be the great White Hope? Because he was. Because that's how hated, that's how loathed Muhammad Ali was still going into that fight. I mean, maybe Ali had built up half by then. Maybe he had half the nation. Maybe. He certainly had my house. And he lived in Chicago at the time. But he didn't have most people. I mean, the Ali we know now was not the Ali that we had then. And for him to fight Joe Frazier's kids, Greeny, hated each other for a long time. I mean, his daughter, one of Joe Frazier's daughters was a lawyer, and she wanted to fight Layla Ali. This is, there would be fight nights. There would be fight nights like in every city in America had a fight night, right? And the greatest fighters of all time would come, and you'd be in black tie. You've seen films of these things if you haven't been to one. And the one in Washington, D.C., I mean, I remember one time Ali and Frazier, and I'm talking about I was 40 years old. So this is 20 years ago. They had to be separate. People didn't know if they could sit together. And this is the greatest. Duke Carolina is the greatest rivalry. No, it isn't. No, there's a 3-installation rivalry. That is the greatest thing ever.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.